It's bread day here on the channel, so let's make some gluten-free pumpernickel bread. I'm Jamie with SavorySaver. I share gluten-free recipes, tips, tricks, and resources to make your gluten-free lifestyle easier. So let's get started. So if you watched my channel before, you know I like to always proof my yeast in some warm water that's in the recipe, whether it be active yeast or instant. I do have instant. I have 1 packet or 2 1/4 teaspoons of instant yeast. I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of sugar. That's what's in the recipe, so I'm just adding it now. I'm going to give everything a mix just to distribute it and break up the yeast. My water is at about 110, 111 degrees. Now I'm going to put this to the side for about 5 minutes and give it time to activate. And while that happens, we'll start with our other ingredients. All right, let's get our dry ingredients together. So to a medium bowl, I've got 2 cups of brown rice flour. To that, I want to add a 1/2 cup of tapioca starch, a 1/2 cup of potato starch, a 1/2 cup of dry milk. This bread uses xanthan gum as the binder, so I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of that. Pumpernickel bread is a dark bread. We're going to add 1 tablespoon of cocoa powder. We're also going to add 1 tablespoon of caraway seeds. That's going to give us that distinct flavor. I'm going to add 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt. Once you have all your dry ingredients together in a bowl, let's get them all whisked together and distributed evenly. All right, once everything is whisked together, we can move that to the side and start our wet ingredients. So for our wet ingredients, you are going to need the stand mixer for this most likely, because we are going to mix this batter for 10 minutes. So you're probably not going to want to have to be hands-on with that electric mixer. And I'm not sure how thick it's going to be yet either. So just keep that in mind for this recipe. I've got 3 large eggs in the bowl at room temperature. To that, I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of vegetable oil or canola oil and 3 tablespoons of molasses. And I have it in this measuring cup, and I have them both in here because I'm hoping, because the molasses is sticky, that the oil has coated that glass and everything pours out. Let's see if that happens. So it didn't get all of it, but it did get most of it. So that's a helpful little thing to do, is if you're measuring something sticky, to use a little bit of oil to help everything release faster. We're also going to add 1 teaspoon of vinegar. The recipe does not state what type of vinegar to use, so I'm going to use apple cider. This recipe is from the Red Star Yeast website, so I will link below to the full recipe, and I will list all the ingredients and anything you may have trouble finding in the description below, so check that out. You're going to want to use your flat paddle attachment for this. So before I add the water and the yeast mixture, I am going to beat this just for a second, just to break up the egg yolks. There we go, literally just enough to break everything up. Now I'm going to pour in that yeast and sugar mixture in the water. Let's get everything combined before we add our dry ingredients. Okay, everything is mixed up. Now, of course, it's going to incorporate even better as we add the dry ingredients. So we're going to turn the mixer on to low speed. I'm going to add everything slowly because, of course, I don't want a cloud of flour in my kitchen if I can help it. Once everything's been added, I'm going to bump my mixer up to medium, and I'm going to mix it for 10 minutes before doing anything else. So I'll probably check it every couple minutes, scrape down the bowl as needed, and once we get it all mixed, we'll keep moving forward. We are at the 5-minute mark, and everything looks like it's mixing really well. But just to make sure, I'm going to scrape the bowl down and get all the way to the bottom and pull up anything that may be dry at the bottom still. So sometimes the starches can get stuck on the bottom. So that'll give you the opportunity to make sure everything's mixing properly. And it actually looks like it is. So back down into the bowl and another 5 minutes. So our second 5-minute time has gone by. I have taken this off the mixer, scraped everything back down to the bowl, and as you can see, it's a pretty thick cake batter consistency, which is typical. So I'm going to put this to the side just for a second. You want to bake this in a 9x5 bread pan. I've got this greased with shortening, but use whatever kind of oil that you prefer. Let's get our batter slash dough into the bread pan. Okay, everything's spread out in the pan, so let's put this over here for just a second. We're gonna cover it for about an hour and let it rise. And that's an approximation because, of course, depending on your kitchen or where you proof your dough, it may take less time, it may take more time. So I've got a piece of plastic wrap. I'm gonna spray it with some cooking spray. I'm gonna lightly drape it over the pan. And if you've watched my channel before, I like to proof my breads in the oven. My oven goes to 170, so whatever the lowest setting is in your oven. I turned it on for about a minute and then I turned it off. That'll keep everything in there warm, it's draft free, and lots of times I find that it actually helps everything rise faster. So I'm gonna put this in, again, for about an hour, but I'm gonna check it in probably 30 minutes because if it looks good, I'm gonna take it out and start preheating my oven. So let's get this rising and we'll be back in just a second. So we are at the 45-minute mark of rise time and it is up over the pan. So I've turned my oven on to 375 degrees. Once it hits temperature, I'm gonna put this in and bake it for about an hour. The recipe says to bake it until a toothpick comes out clean, but I'm gonna try to bake it to temperature. So I'm gonna try to bake it to somewhere between 205 degrees, 210 degrees, so I know the bread is done. Again, that's gonna take about an hour. So we'll get this in the oven, we'll see how it does, and then we're gonna need to cool it in the pan for 10 minutes before taking it out to cool completely. So let me get this baked and I'll show you what it looks like. So the recipe doesn't say to do this, but I think because it's so puffy, I'm gonna do this and see how it works. I'm gonna take a sharp knife and I'm gonna cut along, all the way along the loaf. That way there, any of the steam that comes out hopefully will come out through here and not out the sides and knock our bread down. Let's get this baked off. So it's been about 50 minutes and it's getting a little dark up here, so I decided to check it. And we are at 210 when I checked it just a second ago. 209.5, but it was at 210 a minute ago. We're gonna call that good. The slit along the top worked nicely because I didn't have any breakage on either side, so I'm happy with that. Now I've got to let it cool 10 minutes before taking it out of the pan, and once it cools completely, we'll give it a taste. So here's our finished gluten-free pumpernickel. That slash I put in the top of the bread really helped to give it better shape than some of my other loaves have, and it gave it some place for the steam to escape, so I didn't have anything going over the pan. It is a little dark at the top. It baked for 50 minutes to temperature, as you guys saw. And while it's a little dark on the top, the inside looks fine. So I'm glad I temped it, and I'm glad I took it out at the 50-minute mark. I let it cool for 10 minutes, took it out of the pan, let it cool completely. If you look along the bottom, you can see a little bit of moisture here. Very typical of gluten-free bread baking if you do any kind of that. So that's not super surprising to me, but it does look cooked through, so I'm not too bad about that. Usually that's the starch in the gluten-free flours. The main binder in this is xanthan gum, which the more I bake breads that are gluten-free, the more I tend to like the psyllium husk results better. But, you know, we gotta try multiple breads to find something that we like. Here's a slice of it. It does have really good crumb, and surprisingly, it's not too bad of a cut for me with a manual knife. Usually I screwed up. As usual, I'm gonna try half without butter and half with butter. I am trying the heel of the bread. It's pretty soft. The caraway seeds, a little bit of cocoa powder in there, really gives it the taste of pumpernickel. The bread's tender. It doesn't really taste gluten-free, so I'm okay with that. I am still concerned with it drying out faster, but it has 3 eggs in it, which would help with moisture retention. It has milk that would help with that. That powdered milk will help retain the moisture because it's got more protein in it. It does not have a burnt taste for the darkness that it got on the top, so I'm happy with that. Okay, on to the half with butter, of course. Butter can only make it better, as I say in lots of videos, so let's try it. Of course, butter makes it better, but plain, it's not bad. Storage, again, if you're not using it today, I would definitely look at storing it long-term in the freezer. What we've been doing is cutting the entire loaf up in slices and then wrapping it really tightly, lots of times in saran wrap, plastic wrap, whatever you want to call it, and then additionally in aluminum foil to help keep that cold in, but no moisture. I don't know if I would keep it more than today without getting it into the freezer though, only because I'm a little leery of it drying out further. Taste-wise, texture-wise, good recipe, easy to make. Definitely recommend the stand mixer with this one because we did mix it for so long. It didn't seem like it was thick enough that it would not go through your hand mixer. So if you wanted to stand there by hand and hold the mixer and move it around for 10 minutes, might not be a bad thing either. You might be able to shy off a couple minutes of that mix time and test that out, especially if you're using a hand mixer. I will link down below to any kind of ingredient that you may have a hard time finding in your grocery stores, but it's pretty standard stuff. Brown rice flour, potato starch, tapioca starch. Usually those items I can find right in my regular grocery store, but depending on where you live, you may not be able to. Guys, gluten-free pumpernickel bread from the Red Star Yeast website. Separate flours, easy recipe. Leave me all your comments below. Do you even like pumpernickel bread, or did you like pumpernickel bread before you were gluten-free? That's all I've got for today, guys. I want to thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.